Today, we're going to be exploring the next level of the Slaves to Darkness. Now, before we humble ourselves and learn about the more basic units like warriors and knights, I wanted to have a discussion about the demonic elements of this army. And not just strictly demonic, but I mean like the big, bad, cool stuff. And this is for two real reasons. One, they are the coolest part of this army to me. But two, more importantly and more relevant, they represent the goal. And I thought it was important to kind of tackle what all those warriors are striving for before we talk about them. Because the ultimate prize of a successful walk, right, a saunter, if you will, down the path to glory, sure, this is ascension to demonhood. But along that path, you're also going to walk alongside some true abominations, monstrosities born out of hell itself. And in their presence, you cannot show fear or awe at their sight, but in all things, walk with them in confidence. I love this monster and creature formed by the warping power of chaos thing, and so we're going to dive into those as well as the demon princes in this episode. Now, as always with a lot of these things, not a ton of art exists for these specific units, but I will of course show the model as I begin talking about it so you know exactly what I'm talking about. Now we're going to start small and then kind of work our way up. So two of the new creatures that were included in this new battle tome, we're going to kick it off with the Raptor X. This is one of the creatures that debuted in Warcry. It is a terrible bird type thing born of the warping power of chaos in the all points. Simply put, the Raptor X is a catch-all term for an avian creature mutated by chaos. It generally appears as a large bird with many eyes and a hooked beak, sharp talons, and it's almost like their minds are stuck in this state of perpetual attack. They can't really be tamed, but you can point it at something for them to attack, or you can kind of steer the rage rather than controlling it like a traditional pet. While they are not intelligent per se, like you can't, reason with them, they are subtly cunning, and in a flock, they can actually take down significantly larger targets than they themselves. Now, one thing I found interesting was that even though it was born, created, I guess you could say, or warped into existence in the Bloodwind Spoils, part of the All Points, it's been seen passing through realm gates chasing after food and has slowly begun to spread as a species to several different realms. So it's actually slowly becoming a fixture across the mortal realms. Also introduced with Warcry is the second entry I wanted to cover, and that is Furies. And there's actually kind of a very interesting thing. When I got into this hobby, there was an old model sculpt for Furies that everyone universally hated, and they kind of just disappeared, and I hadn't even heard of the unit for several years until these came out, and some of the older gamers that I know, at least the ones who've been in the hobby longer than I have, were really excited about what Furies represented. They are the winged Imps of Chaos Undivided. In fact, they really do stand out as unique for being truly undivided demons, owing no allegiance to any of the dark gods. They are manifestations of true chaos. And as such, they are spiteful and selfish and hostile in all things. Now, in the game terms, they actually represent this by these are the undivided demons that you can summon through various mechanics in the army. I don't talk about rules too much in these videos, but what I'm pointing out is that this is like the defiant fixture of an undivided demon is the Fury. They boast these menacing glares and razor-sharp teeth, these lithe little bodies and huge wings, proportionally to how big they are. And they fight by using speed as their advantage, often attacking quickly as a flock and just shredding things and screaming at each other, fighting over meat and trinkets. They rip off their dead victims. However, their main weakness, aside from just being, somewhat fragile and wearing no armor whatsoever, is fearfulness, right? If they feel like a battle is not going their way, they will disperse and then come back to attack later, because there's nothing they hate more than a fair fight. So they'll wait until your army's asleep, and then they'll come and pounce all again, or maybe they'll pull your unit away from the main line of the battle, and they'll snap the trap there and get you again. So they're not like big impressive things like, an undivided, bloodthirster equivalent, but they're these little things that just get in the way and just bring chaos, and not in the grand capital C chaos of like the army, but just anarchy to the battlefield by kind of destroying plans, being annoying, but also brutal. Now we're going to take a big step up in scale and size from the basic Fury and Raptor X. Talk about the Slaughter Brute, right? These are heaving masses of muscle and rage. A Slaughter Brute has little capacity for thought outside of what it's going to kill next, right? It's like again, kind of like the Raptor X, it's stuck in attack mode perpetually, and it's actually not a good life, right? They're miserable and they're angry and they just want to destroy anything that they see. Each limb of a Slaughter Brute is covered in these sharp claws and hooks, and each one is deadly enough to cut clean through the thickest of armor. Because it's not just that it's particularly sharp, it's that it has so much force behind it that it can just pierce anything. Now, they really cannot be tamed in the traditional sense. They don't have enough brain power really to follow common commands, but there is a way to control them. And I think this is one of the coolest things that they've translated from the lore into gameplay. And I'm just going to talk about the lore part of it. You can go ahead and read the War Scroll for yourself. But Slaves to Darkness sorcerers have found that if they put the right incantations on a sword, they can dominate the creature's mind. That is to say, you can bind its will to a weapon. Here's the problem. The one wielding the sword has to get on the monster's back and stab it down into his spine. And so this is why Slaughter Brutes tend to be somewhat rare within Slaves to Darkness armies, because it's just, you get near it and it just rips you to shreds. However, if it's done, whoever put the sword in his back now has a mind lock on the Slaughter Brute. He commands it as if it were an extension of his body. Any special skills or aptitude or knowledge that the wielder, I'm just going to call him the wielder, even though the sword is now lodged in the creature's back, anyone who put the sword in there as the wielder has any skills, the Slaughter Brute gains. So it makes him even more deadly. He's a creature that's more dangerous being controlled, even though it's extremely hard to control him. And this level of mental domination is excellent, makes the creature itself this great living battery ram weapon. But there's a catch to it, and it's a kind of a very simple, foreseeable catch, which is if the Slaughter Brute strays too far away, or the guy who put the sword in his back dies, it again loses its mind and begins attacking friend and foe alike in this absolute fit of rage. So on one hand, you have this creature that you make even more deadly on top of how deadly it naturally is, and it can be focused into this incredible weapon. But now the guy who wields it and commands him, his owner basically, is now a liability, because if anything happens to that guy or he can't keep up with the Slaughter Brute, things get real nasty really fast. Now, it's easy to see how such a creature who's just all bent on shredding anything he sees apart could be a favorite pet of Khorne. And traditionally, the Slaughter Brute has been a Khornate style monster. However, they kind of backed off that a little bit. You can now give him the Mark of Khorne, but he's not the sole owner of all the Slaughter Brutes in the realms. There are those who are not his pets. They just do things that he likes. And right alongside the Slaughter Brute is the other thing you can build from that exact same kit, and kind of comparable in size, kind of why I put these two together. That is the Mutalith Vortex Beast. I'm just going to call it the Mutalith from here going forward because it's a mouthful for a name. This is a strange one to cover because it doesn't really have much concrete information about it, because they are by nature ever-changing. People can't really study them and learn about them. You can often find the Mutalith near the realm's edge, where the warping power of pure magic is raw and plentiful. Now, if you know, most realms, towards the edges of the realm is where things get really, really wild. If you're near the edge of Akshi or Mofire, you could just suddenly burst into flames, something like that. It's a little bit different in Shyish, where it's actually been inverted by Nagash, so now it's in the centers where things get really wacky. But wherever there's the strongest magic that has the power to change things is where you'll find the Mutalith Vortex Beast. It's a huge creature that kind of stumbles around, attacks whatever it can with a series of barbed tentacles. It's actually its internal organs and its guts basically just out writhing in front of it, just snatching anything it can get. Even though there is a model for it, The way it's described with constant change and warping and twisting, like, you shouldn't be limited by that, so making your own or having a proxy, that kind of stuff, it all makes perfect sense. Because there's no defined description of it physically outside of the tentacle lashing thing. However, the most prominent feature of this is the warp gate on its back. And think about it this way, it's a point that makes the line between the realm of chaos and the mortal realms very, very thin, where the random powers of the warp can lash out and corrupt everything around them. Weird stuff just happens around the Mutalith Vortex Beast. There was actually a story in the Realm Gate Wars where they fought one of these, and it like turned one guy into a monster or a creature. One guy, he was turned into living metal. Just strange things kept happening as the magic was pouring out of this little gate on its back. And it's easy to see why these creatures are used whenever they are found, right? Because the ability to corrupt and twist and destroy enemies with the raw power of chaos, right? Limbs become monsters. Imagine like you're holding your sword and all of a sudden your sword drops to the ground and you realize like now there's a python attacking you where your hand used to be, that kind of stuff, right? You got limbs becoming monsters, people turned inside out, they burst into flames. There's no way to tell what will happen in the presence of this creature. But all of that, even though it's random, it goes like collectively and makes them like this perfect picture of the nature of chaos itself. Now there are 3 entries remaining on this list, and I love every single one of them. We'll kick it off with the Chaos Spawn. Now, I talked about this monster when I covered the Beasts of Chaos, but for those of you who don't know, I think it's really important to hammer it home, specifically in this book. Every single warrior in this army is walking their own path to glory. If you fail in walking that path to glory, or if you take on too many gifts from your patron god all at once, you run the risk of becoming a spawn. This constantly mutating mass of flesh and pain, trapped eternally to this hellish existence, right? Like every mad scientist experiment gone wrong. You're not just you, but now you're Cronenberg you, to kind of steal a phrase from a popular show. And while there is a spawn model, much like the Vortex Beast, right, they can really look like anything, right? Animal parts fused with men, multiple heads and personalities all arguing with each other, writhing in pain, bits of rusted weapon lodged inside their skin. Bones are constantly cracking and snapping and twisting and reforming, heaving masses of agony. And it is the ultimate punishment for service to the dark gods and failing. And frankly, it's the fate of most of those who walk the path to glory, right? If you don't die in battle, and your soul just goes instantly to the realm of chaos because they have claim on you, the fate of most of those who walk the path to glory is spawndom, right? Very few reach this kind of ascension to demonhood, but it is way more likely that you will turn into a spawn. They're allowed to stay around the army because they still have usefulness. I mean, there's still constant reminders of, the mission that every single one of those warriors is on, and the price of failure. So it's important to have them around. Plus, the fact that they are just these angry, in pain, writhing masses makes them fairly good in combat. You just launch them forward at the enemy and you don't care if they live or die. So if they take out a few of the enemy, why not? But they are often despised because what you're looking at is someone who's just been clearly marked as a failure. But while we're bringing up the path to glory, let's talk about that ascension that I mentioned just before. And we're going to talk about that in the form of the Demon Prince. This is the fate that's bestowed upon the tiniest fraction of champions. If you have a lifetime of destruction, glory, worship, and devotion, keeping in mind that a lifetime is a loose word since the gods will extend your life for hundreds and hundreds of years, you can become a demon prince. This is when your patron god sees your many deeds, acknowledges you personally as a true servant, and imparts a portion of their near infinite might to you, reforming you from being a mortal to a true demon, this engine of destruction. While greater demons look down on demon princes because, you weren't always born of, our patron god, you used to be just a lowly human, the forces of the slaves to darkness venerate them as near deity, living idols of their god, because this is proof that the path to glory is real and tangible, right? It's as real as the spawn. This isn't like a carrot dangling in front of you. This is like, no, this is achievable if you sacrifice enough. And in combat, that faith that they have, that, in seeing this ascension happen, is made fact, because the demon princes are a sight to behold. With the sheer barbarism that they gained for a full life as a champion warrior, now augmented with the pure might of a god. They are terrifying, they inflict so much damage, they can shred armor to bits with their bare hands, they wield all kinds of demonic weapons. But you gotta remember, this is their happy ending, right? This is the best Hallmark movie ending possible for anyone who walks the path to glory. It's what you get when you've spent a lifetime worshiping, pursuing, and killing for a chaos god. One final note here is that they are incredibly arrogant, right? Befitting a mind that has achieved all its goals in life. They've ascended to a place where few others will. Now there is one demon prince above all of those who stands out from the others, and this is Be'lakor. And what sets him apart is that he is, in fact, the only demon prince of Chaos Undivided. Where others have spent decades and maybe even centuries pursuing the attention of a single chaos god, Be'lakor has somehow achieved this ascension by getting blessed by all of them, or none of them, instead getting that from some other power. Now, I know that Be'lakor is actually a character that was kind of crossed over from the old world, but as I tried to learn more about him, the online resources I could get conflicted with one another. So if you know about Be'lakor really, really well, leave in the comments down below and I'll pin it for future viewers. I would greatly appreciate it. Remember, keep it clean, keep it helpful, but the scant bits of info that we get from this book in the Mortal Realms are pretty sweet. It's thought that at some point he ruled over huge portions of Olgu, right before Malarian, the god of shadows, the good, good in quotes, elven god, woke up. And there's these ancient pictograms from tribal cultures with glyphs and that kind of stuff depicting a creature that looks just like him from centuries ago. So he existed in this kind of prehistory state before what we know as the Age of Myth, which makes him probably the oldest active character in the Mortal Realms, because the story really starts with Sigmar waking up and meeting, the rest of the Pantheon. So he had to have some kind of influence before even that. And what's interesting about him is he really seems to have his own agenda, and yet is somehow bound into loose servitude to Archaon that no one really can explain. And so backing up from all of this, my favorite part of these videos, why are these units cool? And let me be super blunt, okay? Straight up, this is my opinion. If you want to play Slaves to Darkness, but you don't like the lore behind any of these units, and I mean any single one of them, I sincerely think that you should look at a different army, and I don't say that lightly. I mean, it's as a joke, of course. But the reason I say that is, this faction is about the near endless hordes of Chaos Warriors, right? The teeming masses of the realms, because they make up the far majority of people in the realms, anyone who's dedicated to chaos. Each is on a personal mission to become a living avatar of the gods themselves. All of it's incredibly epic, and it always ends one of three ways: death, spawndom, or ascension. But the reward is so great that it outweighs all of the risks. All the things that you'll encounter on your journey down this road, right? Empires falling, friends conspiring, hulking beasts of rage, writhing mad spawn that you once called family and friends. All of it's in pursuit of demonhood, and you can achieve it. And if you do, it's absolutely worth it, every bit. Immortality and the chance to serve your god indefinitely. And I love this faction for that exact reason. This is kind of why I'm getting all excited about this. It's not just an army. It's this non-stop life mission, a religion, a visible goal, and this ultimate game of risk and reward. It's all of that and the kinds of creatures we talked about here, not just the Demon Prince, right? But also the warping Mutilith Vortex Beast and the Slaughter Brute, even the Raptor X and the Corn Turkeys, as I like to call them, is all wrapped up in this amorphous poison of reality that we call chaos. I absolutely love it. My favorite unit here, if you can't guess, it's the Demon Prince, right? It would have been awesome if I ended this by saying, oh, it's the Corn Turkey, but I love the idea of playing the champion who finally made it. If I was going to do a Slaves to Darkness army, I would absolutely play as the Despoilers and have a Demon Prince themed warband. That story, the journey itself, is so compelling to me that I actively hate the fact that you can start with a Demon Prince in the actual Path to Glory section of this book. It made me cringe when I read that. I was like, what are you doing? No, this is the whole point. We have to earn this, man. I love it so much that I develop, that kind of instant neck beard that I hate for everybody else online. But it just brings me out because I'm super passionate about it. It was actually the first exposure that I had to Games Workshop games, was watching people play Path to Glory and watching people ascend to Demon Princes and that kind of stuff. It's just, to me, has always been the most unique Warhammer thing, and I absolutely loved it. But anyway, from that list, tell me what your favorite unit is. I know a lot of people were excited to see Be'lakor, and there's a lot of folks who have like a bunch of Mutalith Vortex Beasts in their closet that I want to see them get busted out and used. Because it just seems like a really cool mini with a really fun random rules, and I love random. I mean, that's why I don't win anything, because I love random, which is like the antithesis of competitiveness. But I think it sounds like an absolute blast. So tell me down below. We'll continue the conversation. I look forward to seeing you next time in my next Age of Sigmar lore video. Thank you all so much for watching. Happy wargaming.